Hey everyone, so I want to do the quick video, and this is literally just going to be a Google Doc type of video where I answer some questions. But I had a couple questions come through recently, more geared towards the high school graduate audience. And so I just want to answer those questions real quick in this video. And some of the information I'm going to share is actually relevant for really anybody out there. So first question is, hey, do I still need to go to college if I'm getting different certifications? So for example, if I'm getting like CompTIA's A+, Net+, Security Plus, should I still go to college? Um, Realistically, college and or certs are not necessarily going to be like the super magical key to helping you get a job in the cybersecurity world. So I want to put that out there. I do think there's value in college if you have the money for it. The one benefit right off the bat is a college degree doesn't expire. Certification in most cases will expire. You got to renew it every couple of years. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing because college degree, it's the information you learn, that's it. You've got your bachelor's degree or master's degree or whatever, or associate's degree. And then on the other side, the certifications, you've got to renew, so you've got to stay fresh, on that information every few years or so. And I think CompTIA's, if I recall correctly, are every 3 years. So do you need to still go to college after you're getting certifications? It really depends. I know that's such a generic politician answer, but it really depends on the company you're applying for. It depends on who you know. Like if your dad owns a company and you can get a job there, nepotism will get you the job. It doesn't matter if you got certs or degrees, really. So it really depends on your particular situation. It's kind of a hard question to answer in that regard. There is value in college. I probably wouldn't recommend specifically going for like a cybersecurity degree. And the reason I say that is I think other degrees could open up more opportunities in the technical world for you. For example, getting a degree in like computer science or data science or something, data engineering, whatever they're going to call it. Things like that, I think, could open up more opportunities for you in your career in a variety of verticals, not just a cybersecurity position. So I think in those types of situations, if you go to college and you get a degree that's not cybersecurity, you could potentially open up, when you graduate college, you could open up yourself to a lot more job opportunities than somebody that just gets a cybersecurity degree. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, it's kind of a generic answer. It really depends on your particular situation. College is not necessarily something you have to do. You could just get your certs and then get, an entry-level IT job, which kind of leads into the next question, right? So for an entry-level position, which I want to stress, traditionally cybersecurity roles are not entry-level. Typically in the past, you would come from working like an IT job. So IT help desk, system administrator, network admin, network engineer, those more kind of general IT jobs where you do some security components. Like as a network engineer, you're going to be doing network security. You're going to be putting in different security controls in place. You're going to be working around compliance and things like that. You're just not going to have a job title usually that says cybersecurity, right? So cybersecurity as a term is more of a more recent, I think 10, 15 years ago or something, maybe a little longer, somebody coined the term. But for an entry-level position, what does the industry lean more towards? And I think with this question, you're asking like, do I need a degree? Do I need certifications? Like, what are they looking for? Again, it really depends, right, on what you're going for. You will see positions that are asking for certifications. Sometimes that's for them to have like a bare minimum baseline. You'll also see a lot of positions out there that will ask for a college degree. Understand that in the vast majority of cases, even though they may list it on the job description and say this is required, a lot of times you might still get an interview even though you don't have that stuff. So I want to put that out there as well. Like just because you see it listed in a job description doesn't mean that you can't apply for that job. And it also doesn't mean that when you do apply that you're not going to get an interview. There are some situations where their legal contracts with their clients or whomever, or maybe money they're getting from the government, require them to have people with certain certifications. But if you're more on that kind of entry level plane, a lot of times if they really like you as a candidate, they'll give you a certain amount of time when you get hired to get that certification. So if we use CompTIA Sec Plus as an example, or Security Plus as an example, then you might get hired and they might say, look, in the first 90 days, you got to pass that cert, right? It might be a requirement like that. So you still got to get that certification, but you may not have to get it before you actually get hired, if that makes sense. So the industry as a whole, some companies have moved away from that bachelor's degree requirement because it really if you grow up disadvantaged, if you're a minority, or if you grew up really poor like me, you don't have money for college, right? Yeah, you can go get student loans or maybe scholarships, but it puts you at a disadvantage in the market. And what people have thankfully found pre recent presidential election when I'm filming this, but prior to that, people found that you really needed that diversity of thought, right? And we get that a variety of ways. We get it both diversity of individuals from, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identification, all these different things that make us us, right? But we also get it from life experience differences, right? So me as a white male, me growing up very poor is a lot different than someone that's a white male that grew up with a very wealthy family, right? We have different experiences that we can bring to the table to help solve problems for the organization. So when we talk about diversity, it's not always just things like race or things like that people think of. It's also how you grew up, challenges you faced, even in the workplace or even in, your academia stuff, even challenges in high school, right? For those of you in high school looking at this. So when we talk about entry-level positions, it's typically, there's typically a lot of leeway of certs versus degrees, things like that. People are usually more open. But again, I want to stress that entry level in cybersecurity, it's real tough to get into entry level role in cybersecurity. A lot of times people will do what we call feeder roles or transition roles. What that means is things like your more traditional IT roles. So working in IT help desk or as like a technical support specialist. And you can use like ChatGPT to find different job titles based on things that I'm saying in this video. Feeder roles like that, system administrator, network engineer, the more traditional IT roles, those are those feeder roles, but also things like marketing, sales, project management, program management, so you as a high schooler or whoever you are watching this video right now, you probably have some skills right now that you're good at that you could go get a job working at a cybersecurity company right out of high school. But maybe it's not as a SOC analyst, right, or a penetration tester or a cybersecurity analyst or cybersecurity engineer or forensic analyst, like insert job title, right? But you might be able to get a job as a project manager pretty easily, right? Or marketing. There's all sorts of marketing jobs open. There's a group called Cybersecurity Marketing Society. They have a private Slack channel. You could just apply to be in that. It's totally free. And you can say, hey, I want to look at marketing jobs. And literally in high school right now, if you're a high schooler, or even if you're not watching this video, you could literally get in that group and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. And you might get a job offer all of a sudden, right? Or you might get some part-time work, even some volunteer project work just to give you that experience, right? So when we talk about entry level, I don't want all of you watching this to get limited in your thought process of like, oh, it's got to be a cybersecurity job title. There's a lot of ways to get into the industry, and most of us actually came from what we call transition jobs. I came from an IT background. I then got out and did medicine for a while. Then I came back into an IT background, and then eventually what we now call cybersecurity, I started doing that stuff. So you can do that. I know people that worked as technical writers and then worked at a cybersecurity company and then got their, that was their foot in the door essentially to get into a more traditional cybersecurity job title. There's people that came from a psychology background, teachers. There's just all sorts of people in the industry. So if you're watching this video, don't limit yourself. I've actually got, and I'll put it in the description, I've got a whole playlist of different cybersecurity job titles. And in some of those, I also are the transition careers that I'm talking about. I've listed some of those, I think like cybersecurity marketing and a couple of others like sales I covered. But again, keep in mind there's a ton of jobs open at cybersecurity companies. Not all of them are going to be your traditional like SOC analysts, cybersecurity engineer, penetration tester, whatever. And that actually is a great segue into the third question that I got recently, which is how can a high school graduate get a job in cybersecurity, right? So you graduate high school, maybe you've passed a couple of the certifications for CompTIA or something, or maybe the Google certificate or whatever. How can I get that job? What I just literally said, right? The easiest thing for a high schooler to get into is going to be a transition type of job, right? Or a feeder role as we call them. Again, that might be getting IT help desk. A lot of you can literally go apply Best Buy tomorrow and work for the Geek Squad if you got a little bit of technical aptitude. They're not going to pay you a lot. I don't think they pay very well, but it is a job, right? If you're not worried about making a lot of money right away, which honestly coming out of high school you probably won't anyways. But then also things like the marketing, the sales. I mentioned project manager, technical writer. Some of those things you can literally just take a course on like udemy.com. So udemy.com for like $10-15. You could take a course on marketing, learn the basics, and then you could go into a job interview at a cybersecurity company on marketing, and you can talk your way enough through the interview of like things you're familiar with or whatever, right? I mean, as a high schooler, again, I don't want to say the bar is low, but the bar honestly is pretty low coming out of high school because people are like, hey, I mean, you might be 18, but people like my age are like, oh, you're just a kid, right? You're kind of getting your start. People are more likely to help you versus someone that's like, 65 trying to get a job. There's that age bias, right? So like someone coming out of high school, it's a little easier. The bar is set a little lower on expectations. So it's easier to get a job. Now, again, trying to get a specific like cybersecurity career, like SOC analyst, GRC analyst, what have you, auditor, whatever, it may be more difficult just regardless, right? Because the market right now is really saturated. So, and you've got people with 10, 20 years experience that can't get a job. They're taking a year or two to get a job. So the easiest thing or the way I would recommend a high school graduate gets a job in cybersecurity is one of those transition or feeder jobs. That's going to be the easiest route for you, in my opinion. And the other cool thing about that is you might think that right now you want to be a penetration tester because you took a couple classes and you maybe did a certification or something. But then you actually go work at a company that does that and you realize, oh, I hate that stuff. Like, that's so boring. I don't want to deal with all that. I want to try GRC instead, And that's a cool thing about working these feeder or transition roles is you get exposed to all these different roles in cybersecurity. And you can actually talk to these people working in these jobs and learn from them and see if it's even something you want to do because you learn about the day-to-day. The other cool thing is it allows you to network. So then when you want to go get your actual cybersecurity job, whatever you choose, whatever career path you choose, you've got a whole network of people you can tap into. And you can say, hey, I'm now looking for my first job as a junior penetration tester. And you can just reach out to your network. And there's probably someone that's like, oh, I'm a hiring manager for a company that does that. Let me see if I can get budget to hire you. And all of a sudden, you didn't have to apply for a job. You just reach out to your network, right? But you don't get that stuff usually straight out of high school. You've got to work those, jobs and get exposure out there. So that's my recommendation on these three, questions I got recently. It's really, there's no set requirement for a cybersecurity job. Again, you'll see certifications, degrees in the job description, but just anything in the job description really is a wish list, honestly. A lot of them are written very poorly. And so what the hiring manager even wants isn't even in the job description, right? A quick example of that is I had someone reach out just a few years ago and there's like, hey, I'm looking for someone to fill this role. They shared the role with me, the job description. I looked at it. It was a wish list. They wanted all sorts of stuff, but it was what they were calling an entry-level job. And I was like, well, like if you had one technical skill set that you wanted them to have coming in and then you could train them on everything else, like what is that? And they said, oh, I want them to have some basic, Linux server administration, being able to secure a Linux server, at the basic level, and just kind of understand the basics, basically. And so I was like, okay, but none of that was in the job description at all. It didn't even mention Linux at all in the job description. And so my point here is that you look at a job description, it's really a wish list. If you feel that you could do that job, then apply for it. The other thing I'll say is in your cover letter, talk about why you want that job. Not, oh, it's a, me, but more about like, I've got a background in this, or maybe I worked at Burger King and I learned these skills there. And I noticed that I'll be using some of those skills there, like customer service, for example. And I'm really excited about that. Plus it blends my, stuff I'm learning about, whatever in cybersecurity. It blends this other thing I'm interested in. That goes a long ways for someone looking at your cover letter for you to show that you want to be there and that you don't just want a job. What do I mean by that? A lot of people just want a job, and we all get that, right? You want to earn money, you want to get experience, you want to be in a good environment, you want to grow your career, right? All these things. But as a hiring manager, I want to hire someone that actually wants to be there. Because if you want to be there, then you're going to stay there. And I'm not naive, right? I know at some point you're going to need to leave to grow your career probably. But I want someone that's not going to leave in like 6 months, right? I want someone that's probably going to stick around for like a year or maybe more, because that way as a hiring manager, number one, it costs less for the business to keep having that turnover to try to find somebody and go through the hiring process and all that stuff. But mostly you being there, like, let's just say a year or more, it allows me as your hiring manager to help you actually grow your career. And you might not see that up front, right? But if you get a good hiring manager, their goal is to help you grow as an individual to get you to that next level that you want to do, which is why we set you down at the beginning. Once you've hired you and say, hey, let's plan out some goals for you, etc., right? It's not to be a jerk, right? It's not to be a jerk. It's not to, pick on you and be like, oh, you better tell me your goals or else, right? It's about how can we empower you in your career? How can we help you in your career? And realistically, if you keep changing jobs every few months, number one, I can't help you in your career. And number two, it's a huge red flag when you apply for the next job. I'm going to be like, why? At some point, it can't always be the other people, right? It can't always be like, I didn't like the environment. It wasn't a good environment for me. At some point, you need to be a grown up and take accountability and say, well, even though I don't like this environment right now, how does this environment I'm in help me grow my career? Like, do they have tuition assistance I can use? Do they have, a growth plan, like a leadership program I can get involved in? How can I, ask my boss's boss how to make their life easier? Because maybe I don't like my current boss, but maybe I can, go ahead and start helping the boss's boss and try to move up in the company to get out of my current situation at some point, right? But you can't do all that if you keep changing jobs every 2 months, right? It just isn't realistic. So hopefully I answered these questions in this video. I probably rambled a little bit, but hopefully this information is helpful for all of you out there and helps you get into your first cybersecurity career at some point, because we definitely need you. There's a lot of chaos in the world and we need your help.